people always ask me, they'll say, well, why'd you change the names? I said, well, say Cypro and Amplifon and say Citizen, if you still ask me that.
That's a great question. We get the name all the time, and no, we are not a base-based organization.
Proprietary software that can help map the entire land area that we're looking at to basically look and see where the issues may be quicker, faster, and safer.
This is the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect podcast with your host, Ryan Ray.
Welcome to another edition of the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect. I'm your host, as always, Ryan Ray. So good of you to join us today. This show is the show dedicated to connecting you with upstream, midstream, downstream, wherever you're at in the oil and gas industry. We want to bring folks together so they can learn more about who is doing what and where. And the show, as always, is sponsored by R Squared Global, engineering, project management, consulting, surveying needs, GIS, etc. Go to GoR2.com for more. Today we have on, I don't know if we've had on someone from this part of the space before, but it's, not that I can remember, maybe we have. If not, it's a gentleman I've got to know just here recently over the past week or two. We have been connected on LinkedIn and had a great call the other day, and actually might have put him on something down internationally. We'll see about that in a minute. But Juan Avendano, who's a recruitment consultant for, is it Fircroft? How do you say the name there, Juan?
Fircroft, but that is correct.
I was going to say Fircroft, but I was like, wait, there's no E. It caught me off guard. Fircroft Group, Fircroft.com is the website. That's Fircroft.com, rather, is the website. Fircroft.com. We will link to that in the show notes. Juan is based out of Houston, if I remember correctly. Juan, how is it going today, sir?
It's going great. Just enjoying another start to the week. Blessed to be here with you. Like you said, we had a great conversation past couple of weeks. So just honored to have the opportunity to share some information here with y'all and, just continue learning in this industry. So thanks a lot for having me on. Well,
it's good to have you. And try to ask what's in a name. And I, being that I thought it was Fircroft until I read the promo read in, it's Fircroft. We'll say that name a lot. What is there something behind the name, business owner name? Does it have some unique meaning, or is it just a name?
It's actually has a funny story. Fircroft, the name of Fircroft, I hope I'm not misspeaking, but I believe it was the name of the street where Fircroft originally started. Fircroft's been around for a really long time. It started out in the UK, and now it's a global company. Global capacities we're pretty much in every part of the world, working in large and small oil and gas projects. But when it started, I believe that the company got started on Fircroft Street, and it was just something that the owners were like, what are we going to call this? And they literally just thought of Fircroft because it was the name of the street or something along those lines. Don't quote me. I know you can't find the whole story on the Fircroft.com website, and it is pretty interesting. But no, Fircroft doesn't have any hidden secret or any other meaning. That was definitely one of the first questions that I had. It was it's definitely just the street name of where the company took off.
Well, I am on East Pearl Street as we sit here today, so I don't know. Maybe I'll go to change my company into Pearl or something. But that being said, recruiters. Let's talk about recruiters. You guys play an important role, a necessary role. Sometimes you guys get a bad rap for the role you play. Let's talk about, obviously, oil and gas. I know you, from our conversation, at least what you do has a very specific niche, but so let's just set the table for who you are inside the company and what it is that you do, and then also maybe other things that for our listeners who are in oil and gas, if there's other areas that you don't cover that maybe your company covers as well inside the industry.
Okay, perfect. So I do business development for Fircroft. And so, like I said, we're a staffing agency with global capabilities. So our main focus is in oil and gas, but we do have different industries. So in my every day, it can really vary a lot. Every day is so much different than the prior day because one day I'm working with a large company, working with an engineer, and then the next day I could be working with a mid-sized company, perhaps on the oil field services side. So we kind of touch a little bit of everything from the oil field services side. We do also have now Fircroft Oil Field Services, which we're using that to staff a lot of short-term projects, and we have that out of Louisiana. So we work in that industry, and we also work heavily, like I mentioned to you in the past, with engineers from all levels of engineers. And now we actually have a property and construction division. So Fircroft has the capabilities to recruit across different industries, but we mainly do focus on the oil and gas sector, heavily working largely with engineers at the moment. But myself, like I said, I'm out here doing business development for us. So what that entails is really just going out there and kind of being a new face for the company. Every time I go out, like the opportunity that I had with you, we've never met before, but I'm really just trying to bridge the gap between my company and other individuals, perhaps finding an opportunity for them to be employed by a new company. Or in my case, I'm really just reaching out, trying to network and grow my network in the industry and really just learn and see what's out there. To be honest, this is a good position for someone that is just trying to learn and trying to tap into different niche markets of the oil and gas industry.
You know, it's funny. After we talked, I think I sent you an engineer your way, but I thought of another engineer I need to send your way as well. You say engineer, that has a lot of meanings, though, so let's kind of break that down. Petroleum engineer, civil engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, I'm sure nano or who, God knows what all kinds of engineering degrees are out there. You're saying engineer, so is it any engineering discipline that would fit into the oil and gas industry, or does it kind of ebb and flow? Like maybe one day it's civil because you're getting a lot of civil requests, and the other day it's petroleum. How do you balance that out?
That's a good question, because you are correct. Every day, and that's what I mean by every day, it can be different. So, for example, one day I could be perhaps working with process engineers that are working in a chemical plant down in the Freeport area. That is a very popular area here in Houston where a lot of these individuals are working at. And the next day, you are correct, I could be perhaps looking for some civil engineers that are doing civil construction here in the Houston area. Or obviously in any city in the country, or if you're speaking of Fircroft, anywhere in the world. So when I guess you're asking about engineers, I do really enjoy this position because it allows me to learn about many engineers, just like you mentioned, petroleum engineers or drilling engineers. As of recently, the past 2 weeks, I've been working with drilling engineers. And the deeper that I get into drilling engineers, I find out that there's so many different niches between a drilling engineer to another drilling engineer. So really, like you said, you are correct. There's not one certain type of industry or one certain type of engineer that we work with. We're pretty wide open to all the opportunities as long as it stretches out through the oil and gas industry. Fircroft usually has a presence there.
Okay. One of the things that I kind of alluded to earlier is, there's some disciplines that just get a bad rap. Lawyers, the IRS, politicians, and recruiters, unfortunately, sometimes get lumped into there. What is it that you're trying to do? Maybe because some people go, God, I don't want to be called 500 times a day. I don't want my resume sent around to everyone. What is it that you're trying to do, or you guys are trying to do, that's trying to maybe distinguish yourself in the industry that's where folks are saying, you know what, I wouldn't mind working with a recruiter. Obviously, right now, as we're recording this, it's just September the 16th in 2019. There's kind of a mixed signals being sent to the market, so having a recruiter to back you could be vital. But some people are like, you know what, I've had bad experiences, so how do you walk them through that process? And the second part is, if you're on my side of the business, which is you own a company and you're saying, you know what, maybe I need some engineers. How do we know that you're going to provide quality? So you could take it from the applicant and then work it all the way through to the employer side.
Okay, well, first of all, when somebody has a conversation with the recruiter, you're absolutely correct. It's almost a little, people kind of cringe a little bit when you sometimes send them a message. They don't really know what to expect. They think that you're trying to sell them on things. But the way that I approach things is I reach out to many individuals, for example, like our conversation. I knew that maybe it was no business was going to develop maybe between you and our conversation, but I knew that it was just something that would be beneficial possibly for you and for me to learn about each other. So the approach that I take is I always call experienced individuals, somebody obviously more experienced than me. So I always appreciate their time, and I let them know, hey, let's just have a conversation. Tell me about what you do. This is just an opportunity just to put ears on your conversation. And, it might not make sense for us to do business now, but let me see what your goals are today. And maybe further down the line, they're going to align with something that I'm doing, and I'll be able to reach back out. And at the same time, I turn around and let them know about what I focus on and what my future goals are. And I think that's honestly the best conversation you can have with the recruiter. I think many times, like you've been saying, people don't even want to pick up the phone. But if you do, don't take it in a way where the recruiter's trying to sell you into something. We're really not trying to sell you. We're really just trying to, hey, run this by you. If you think it's interesting to you, let's go ahead and attack it. But if it's not, let's just have a real conversation and see where it would be beneficial for me to give you a call back. But I totally understand that on the aspect of people not wanting to pick up the phone, and on the everyday scenario, the service kind of we provide is what we when I speak to a client, we let them know that we do offer a lot of benefits for them, all the way from the main part, which is having access to the best potential candidates. We can save them a lot of money in the long run. There's a lot of benefits from just having a quick conversation, but there's a lot of benefits that we can provide, but we can't really get to those if you're not willing to have the quick and short conversation with the recruiter to get things off on the right foot.
Yeah, that's the hard part, because one of the things when we set up the call was I knew going into it kind of Q days, like that's probably not going to be much beneficial. I mean, I do own an engineering firm, but we don't hire them regularly, so we're not looking for recruiting services. But since then, I've been able to send. I'm actually looking on LinkedIn right now. I'm about to send you a second guy that's your way, and I had a good conversation with you, and you weren't overly salesy. So if the report comes back that you're a normal recruiter, I'll be disappointed. But I didn't get that vibe, and that's one thing that you did. I thought that was that kind of impressed me, was you weren't hard selling me over and over and over again. And so it was like, okay, this is a guy who might be handling things a little differently, because people don't want to deal with recruiters, and then sometimes it's embarrassment, sometimes it's they don't want the hassle, they don't want to be sold. There's a lot of reasons, but I think from an employer standpoint, understanding that the recruiter is actually out there networking, dealing with people, is not handling things the traditional way, is a good thing. What are some of the things for listeners who might be looking for a job that you see that, these are things that are killing your chances of getting a job right now?
Okay, well, number one thing that I tell everybody is you got to be active on LinkedIn. Right now, obviously, everything is moving with technology, and having a good LinkedIn profile is the number one thing that I recommend to all of my candidates, and that comes down to very basic information. Perhaps just even having a picture. Many people are afraid to post a picture on their LinkedIn profile. Just make sure that you have that spark on LinkedIn. That would be the number one thing, and that it's also the fastest and quickest way to apply for a new position, and the fastest and easiest way to have a conversation with somebody like myself. And like I said, this is when you have a conversation with the recruiter, many times you just got to take it as an opportunity for you to kind of get your thoughts out there. It's almost like a practice interview, and it's just you got to look at it on a way that it's just going to open more doors for you down the road. I always think that you have to, always invest a little bit of time into the presentation that you're going to make. So my number one advice at the moment is to always be active on LinkedIn. To me, if you can leverage LinkedIn, you can find a lot of opportunities through that. I've been able to walk a couple of candidates through not having a LinkedIn page to creating one, and then them just literally just opening their eyes to a different world of opportunities. Recruiters always know the beat of the industry. They know who's hiring. They know what to look for. So yes, I'd be glad to share with anybody that after this, if anybody decides to reach out to me, I'd be glad to share a couple of pointers on how to specifically help you out in your situation. But definitely LinkedIn, and always be yourself, be clear, concise, and, be ready to not accept an opportunity. If you do call a recruiter and it's not for you, it's okay. Walk away. The next thing is going to come up, and it's going to help the recruiter find that right opportunity for yourself.
Yeah, let's circle back to the LinkedIn thing, because that's interesting. Obviously I've hosted a number of podcasts, and which means I'm talking a lot, giving my opinions. Sometimes I get into political things, sometimes I don't. I don't talk all political things that I'm dealing with all the time, but I do dabble in that world. And it's interesting. One of the things I've tried to advise people of on LinkedIn, I'm curious your take on this, is, I don't, if you get on my Twitter, it's pretty much sports. I will do a little energy stuff because it kind of feeds over my LinkedIn. I don't really do Facebook. Instagram's kind of my kids and whatnot, but LinkedIn is where I really spend a bulk of my time putting out stuff, because that's where my network of people who I can do business with are, as you said. And one of the things I've had to learn is, I kind of have a rule in life. It's kind of, you've heard the 80-20 rule. Well, I've just kind of adopted that for public persona, business life in general. And it basically is I say, I want to be with you, whether it's on LinkedIn or on this conversation or wherever, 80% of who I really am. And the reason is because I can't be with you like I am with my kids, right? That's a different part of me. Okay. So that's just a different part of who I am. It's the same person. The values, the fundamentals, my thoughts are the same. How I want to be treated, how I want to treat you, those are the same. But I'm just going to be different with you than I am my kids for obvious reasons. So when you get on these platforms, I know there's a lot of kind of back and forth right now on LinkedIn about politics and should you talk it or not. But I think the biggest advice I'd say is be 80% of who you are. And so if you get on LinkedIn, you start railing on folks and you don't like confrontation in person, you have set the expectation that you're a very confrontational person. If you are very confrontational and you want to be confrontational, that's fine. But you have to understand that you can't have this online persona that's one thing, and then when you go meet people, it's completely different. Because LinkedIn, if you are very confrontational to kind of take it extreme, it might attract someone who goes, this is who we want. This is a confrontational leader type, da-da-da. And they get you in there and you're really meek and you're quiet and you're soft. They're like, whoa, this is not what they want. What I've learned from content podcasting is that when people listen to a lot of your stuff, they read a lot of the stuff, they build a profile of who you are in their mind. So if you're trying to get hired off LinkedIn, make sure that profile is actually who you are. Because when they call you in for an interview, if you don't meet the expectation of your LinkedIn profile, it could go bad for you, whereas you might have had the job already set up because they liked what was on LinkedIn.
That's absolutely correct. Obviously, you don't want to be a robot on there. Obviously, you want to be able to put a little bit of your personality into everything. But like you said, there is a fine line. You also have to realize that you are trying to create a professional image. So everybody knows what's right and what's wrong. And if you feel like, if you have the doubt, if you're about to perhaps make a post that is possibly more acceptable for Facebook, then if you're having second thoughts, then maybe it's not meant for LinkedIn. But I do think that it is essential to add a little bit of personality. That's why another tip that I give is in the summary, LinkedIn asks you to give a personal summary. Yes, add a little bit of personality and flair to that. Everybody gets to, for example, say if I'm a drilling engineer for 10 years and I worked at X company, you don't just want to write those down on a black and white canvas. You want to actually put a little bit of personality because companies could be attracted to, I don't know, something specific about your personality.
Right.
But you are the 80-20 is a great way to put it. You do want to be very professional, but at the same time, you don't want to be a robot. It could shy people away from you if you don't really put your personality out there for them to see.
Which is hard to balance, and it's easy to, I've done, I think, 400 something podcasts, and I still struggle with what my voice is. That's the term, what's your voice. I still kind of struggle with where I want to be, how I want to be perceived on some things. So it is tough, but I do think that's important that, you could be the robot like you're saying, but the other extreme is you're super flamboyant. Just keep in mind that, again, when they meet you in person, they will perceive you as they've followed you on LinkedIn. And so if you're, to use the robot thing, if you are very robotic and you come in with a big personality, they're going to be kind of caught off guard. Like, dude, this guy had graduated this day, did the, very, very succinct points. And then it could be opposite. What else from the employer side? Maybe what are some of the things from my side of the business? If we have some business owners out there who are listening and going, I get these recruiters, they bring me these guys. How should business owners feel about the hiring process? Are the expectations too high from our side, too low? Are we not clear enough? How can we better work with someone like you to help out you going find the right candidate for us?
Well, number one thing is obviously business owners, even though that you might present, say, 5 candidates that all fit the bill, but it comes back to personality. A lot of times, if you tell me the number one thing you want to relay to your recruiter is the culture that you have within your office. That is number one thing, because you don't want to bring somebody else in there that's not going to fit that culture. Perhaps maybe the person can do the job, or you have 2 people that can do the job, but you make the wrong choice by bringing somebody who doesn't quite who's not quite culturally fit for your office. I think that'd be the number one thing. to relay to one of your recruiters. Number two would be just to always know exactly what are the hard requirements for the position. At times, you give out a very lengthy job description, or you receive a lengthy job description as a recruiter, and you have 100 things on there, but it's only 5 that are really the hard hitters that are going to really get you to close the deal and get them to find the right individual. And this all comes back to being open with recruiters. I feel like, we do get a bad rep out there, but, we're just normal guys like yourself. I consider myself an entrepreneur, but inside of the staffing world. So if you just give somebody a call and really let them know what they're looking for, in my case, I'm running essentially my own business inside of Fircroft. So I want to make sure that I give you the best possible service. And in order for me to do that, you have to have open doors and open communication and really build the relationship with your recruiter, because, it could come down to you perhaps have a long relationship and the recruiter doesn't get any business from it in the end. But as long as you have a good and open relationship, there's going to be no hard feelings.
Okay, one question I've tried to ask everyone. We've kind of touched on some of this stuff, but maybe you can have something we haven't touched on here directly. If there was one thing that you would say, let's talk about for applicants. Okay, so what is the one thing, if you're dealing with an applicant, someone trying to find a job, that if you don't address it early, it might seem insignificant, but as you go through the hiring process, it becomes a big deal. And it's like, whoa, man, I could have gotten you a job if you would have told me this. What would be that one thing?
Well, man, there's always somewhat of an X factor. So I feel like, yes, that does exist, but I feel like it's a case by case scenario. At many times it could be money. At many times it could be something as minimal as, hey, I'm relocating, but I'm not able to know how I'm going to work out the logistics of getting my kids to school in the morning. So those are the really fine details that you really have to find out. Like I said, it's really difficult to pin down, but you really have to, from the recruiter standpoint, when I'm speaking to a candidate, you always want to find out, like I said, the X factors. What is something that is not hitting in the job description, not a monetary issue? Because, a lot of these decisions come down on both sides, on the client side or the candidate side. It comes down to something that's not money, or something that's not something that you don't find in the job description. So a lot of times, I guess if I had to pick one thing, would be job site location. Make sure that you're happy and content with getting to that location, and of course for the right amount of money that you're seeking.
And it's interesting because you think about that. You're like, well, I want a job in Dallas, or where you're at in Houston. I want a job in Houston. Well, that's, if you're in a big city, saying that's it doesn't mean a lot, because sometimes the traffic could be brutal from where your home is to where the job is. So it could be an extra 45 minutes on your commute just because of the traffic involved. So thinking through those things, there's a book called Never Split the Difference. And for the listeners, if you haven't read that book, I've read it, I think 3-4 times now, Never Split the Difference. And one of the things is a former FBI negotiator. And one of the things he talks about is black swans. What you're talking about here is black swans, things that are kind of impacting negotiations that's not readily available. And so that's a great thing, because black swans have great impact on negotiations and getting deals done. And so understanding the black swans, identifying them is a very important piece. And especially when you're talking about the hiring process is, you said this, you said this, you said this. Well, turns out this, when we hadn't even talked about that, understanding that was really a big driver in the negotiations.
Yeah, and funny thing that you mentioned that book, because that is the exact same book where I got that from. Never Split the Difference is a wonderful book, so I highly recommend that as well. And it is a black swan. I just went with the more common word, the X factor.
Yep.
But yes, black swan, X factor. It should be the number one thing you should tackle, in my opinion. It could be anything so small. You can never know what it is, but it can make the world of a difference. And that, in my opinion, what I have seen, the best advice I could give from both sides is just be open and be an open book and be willing to share your information, be clear. And as a recruiter, we're just trying to help out on both ends. That's how I see myself. I'm just trying to bridge the gap between two entities and just really trying to help somebody take the next step in their career progression. And that's the way that I look at it. And if you're willing to help somebody out, then just, enjoy the conversation, and something good will come a bit further down the line.
There we go. Hey, and it's been good for me because I think while we're on the podcast, I actually sent you, like I said, a guy I thought of. I was like, oh man, I've thought of this guy. So, I come in contact with engineers looking for jobs all the time, and I'm not hiring any. We only have a handful on staff, and so, but it's good to have an outlet just to kind of send those guys over to somewhere. And it's good because, you're helping out a friend, and so helping you out, obviously, if I do need engineers 2 or 3 years down the road. Side tip for business owners, if you feed recruiters candidates, you can circle back around those candidates. Ask the candidates how the recruiter did, and then when you need a recruiter, you have already pre-vetted the recruiter. So, if you can kind of built in that vetting process. If you don't need a recruiter today, you can feed them to someone, ask how that went, and then you can just say, okay, well, this worked out well. Juan did a great job. I need a recruiter now. I can bring him in because I've had people go through the process and do it. And everyone's happy. They got a job, so it works out well. So you can being nice and doing good things can help you out in a lot of different ways. Okay, we covered a lot of ground today. Fircroft.com is the website. We will link to that. One, is there anything else that you wanted to plug, promote, point us to before we get out here today, sir?
No, not at the moment. Obviously myself, feel free to reach out to me and anyone at Fircroft, but please reach out to me. I'm open to have any conversations, just like the conversation we had. It's developed. Now I have a call this week out to South Africa. So you never know where this could take you. I might have something in store for you, or you might have something in store for me today, tomorrow, a couple of years down the line. It doesn't matter, but at this point, I'm really just trying to network, so I'm inviting everybody to give me a call, shoot me a LinkedIn message. So that's pretty much it. I'm open to networking, and give me a call. I'm looking forward to meeting anyone in the industry, to be honest.
Okay. Juan, thank you so much for your time today. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep vibing.